Hello and welcome to the Comfy Crafter. I am the Comfy Crafter and today we are going to be making our Bunnies Arm. Now we start as always with a magic circle, and for the Bunnies Arm this is a magic circle with 6 double crochets into it. I'm just going to take this slow so you can see exactly what I'm doing, but I'm going under the 2 loops that I've created on my fingers and pulling the yarn through, and then I'm pulling the yarn through the 2 hoops. So the first stitch is always a slip stitch, and then after that you do your 6 or however many stitches that are required. The majority of the Wee Woolly Wonderful patterns start with magic circles. The alternative of magic circle is to do a chain and then join the chain to the first stitch, but I'm a fan of of the magic circle method. In fact, if I can avoid chain work, I do, because I'm not as confident with it. I much prefer working in rounds. So once you've got your 6 stitches, you're pulling on the loop that moves, and then you're pulling the tail through to create sort of a half crescent. And that half crescent joins into a full circle with the next row. Now, what I'm just doing here is I've started using washi tape to mark my patterns, because I'm finding that all the paper marks on them are too disruptive, especially if I'm doing a pattern multiple times. So I've just started using a piece of washi tape or masking tape to just mark where I'm at in the row. Now, because this pattern is entirely DC, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to speed through what we're doing, pausing when there's something different happening. As you can see here, like doing rows of basically the same number of stitches builds up the core of the arm. So increases in stitching obviously makes it wider and wider, and then when you go to decrease, it makes it narrower. But essentially all I'm doing here is creating a tube of double crochet, which eventually will shape into an arm. once you get your tube created, you're going to move on to doing decreases. Now in this pattern, I think this row calls for 7 stitches and then a decrease, although I might be wrong. But basically you go through as many oh no, I'm wrong, it's three stitches and a decrease. So you do your double crochet normally, and then you're basically going through the first loop of the next 2 stitches to pull them together. So the back loop remains unworked. The front loop is where you're doing the decrease. Some patterns will call for a back loop decrease. It does tend to say in the pattern what kind of decrease you're looking at. I wish I could do double crochet in this speed in reality. Now the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that I am very rapidly running out of yarn here. Now this particular pattern, the way I'm doing it doesn't call for any colour changes, but actually the bunny that I've actually created for this video has got several different colours running throughout it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a colour change. So I'm going to start the stitch as usual, pulling it through the stitch below, and then I'm going to add in my different colour and use it as the yarn through on the stitch. So you've started the double crochet in one colour and then you've yarn through'd with a different colour. Now you can tie off those ends. I didn't, but I would probably recommend that actually if you were making this as a project for somebody else or to sell, you would tie it off to ensure that it doesn't come loose in the wash or anything like that. The only place you have to be careful when you've done a colour change is when you go back into that stitch later on, especially if you haven't tied it off or you haven't tied it off yet. That stitch might be a bit looser than the others, so you want to be careful you don't pull it out when you go over the top of it. So when you get to the final stitch on the arm, you're going to start stuffing. For this particular pattern, the sort of hand end is more stuffed than the top, so actually you leave it quite loose, and I just brought in the other arm there to make sure that the two were the same. And then to finish it off, what we're going to do is we're going to double crochet through both sides, so essentially double crochet through 2 stitches across the top, and that'll give a nice flat edge which we can then sew onto the bunny's body. When you've got the final stitch done, you're going to slip stitch, which is essentially you go through the stitches and pull through, but instead of keeping the 2 hoops on your hook, you actually just pull the thread straight through the first loop. So here you can see, so rather than doing a full double crochet, it's just a slip stitch, and then I'm just going to snip it off enough to sew it on, so about 20 centimeters ish to sew on, and then I've got the finished arm. And next video we'll be doing the ears. And if you are enjoying these videos, please do consider liking and subscribing, and maybe leave me a comment if there's anything you'd like to see me do in the future. See you soon.